Hello and welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I'm Molly Herford, and when I'm not writing about all things training, nutrition, running, biking, being outside, I'm hopefully actually outside doing those things.
And I'm Peter Glassford. I'm a registered kinesiologist and an endurance coach.
So, who do we have up today?
Today we have Danelle Kabush,
who's been on the podcast before.
Yes, a return guest. And she is not a sports psychologist, but a mental performance consultant, I think is the technical term.
Also has her doctorate, though.
Yes.
She's based out of the Canadian Sport Institute out in Victoria, BC. She's one of the smartest humans that I know. She has just ridiculous amounts of experience, both in working with athletes and in being one. She was a pro Xterra racer for quite a few years, actually. And gosh, I remember meeting her at Western Xterra Championships in Vegas, I think 9 years ago at this point, and sitting down and interviewing her then. So it's always fun to chat with her and see where she's gone over the years.
Yeah, exactly. And she's trained with Terry Orlick, so for schooling, I should say. So she was over at University of Ottawa working with Terry Orlick, who has a book that a lot of athletes have. It is called The Pursuit of Excellence. And there's some great resources if you look up Terry Orlick, Pursuit of Excellence, or I think there's also a Wheel of Excellence that's actually like really good. It's a really good like short document. But Danelle got to train under, or just go to school under, do her master's, I think, maybe her undergraduate as well, in that system. So she has some really good experience there, and then also has now been out in Victoria and working with national level athletes, Olympic caliber athletes in a host of different sports. So just a wealth of knowledge. And like you say, with Xterra, also a bunch of different sports that she's done, obviously.
Yeah, so today we really kind of niche down and we talk about, I'm going to say, two major topics. The first and kind of overarching thing being body image in athletes, and the other just being a bit about RED-S, as it's called, relative energy deficiency syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, and this is sort of the progression of the female athlete triad. We're sort of including males into this. And then also sort of recognizing some of the different signs and symptoms. It's not always just amenorrhea, it's not always, sort of that triad of symptoms.
Yeah, I think for a long time, if women didn't have amenorrhea, it was just kind of everything is okay. That was like the straw that would break the camel's back in terms of getting diagnosed with something. So it's pretty great to see, okay, we're not just relying on menstruation as being the only indicator that we're actually in trouble here. We're talking about stuff a lot earlier.
Well, and I think, a term I use is sort of work capacity and fueling the work required, I guess. And maybe I overuse that, to be honest. We're all sort of learning in this process and how we're evolving here. But I think the RED-S gets more to the heart of the issue that, like, in the day, you need to fuel that workout. And a lot of times what's happening is the workout isn't being fueled, but then also the body isn't being fueled. So we're losing, especially in the long term, some of those essential services that your body does, right? Both for males and females. So it's trying to sort of think about that sort of work capacity and sort of fueling that workout. And as we talk about, that isn't necessarily on purpose that the athlete's doing that. A lot of times it could just be education around cooking or sports nutrition in general.
Totally. And I mean, I'll say as far as body image goes, we don't just talk about it in context of body image during or after or before RED-S, or like specifically around RED-S. We talk about it, just for any athlete. So, you can have body image issues without being in physical trouble yet. So we definitely talk about that. And for the parents listening, we talk a ton about how to raise really healthy, happy young athletes, and just some of the ways we can make sure and people, and just ways we can make sure that that body image thing doesn't become an issue.
Yeah, we had some questions around that, which we appreciate. A couple different people asking sort of different questions around raising young athletes, and since we're not parents, we wanted to make sure that we pulled in someone who knew a little bit more. And so Danelle was perfect because there's a sports psych sort of angle to this. Obviously there's some confidence and different sports psych type topics tied into that, but then also as a parent, and then also as a
very active
female
parent.
athlete as well, right? And who's growing up through that, right? As an endurance athlete. So she was, we thought, perfect for this episode. I don't know if there's anything else. Do we have anything else on Danelle and...
No,
her blog. That's what I also want to mention. Her blog, if you go way back, especially if you're a parent or a female athlete, I think, but I think anyone's going to find something there. She comes in and out of it, but there was some years there where she was blogging all the time on her own experience and sports psychology topics. So if you check out her blog, which we'll link to in the show notes as well, it's definitely a good resource.
Yeah, and then actually on this topic, for the parents that are listening that happen to have young girls, we have two things coming up on the horizon, and you can head over to shred-girls.com to find out about them. We have the actual launch party that's going to be up here near Toronto at Joyride 150 Bike Park on May 11th. And then we also have
tell them a little bit about that. So they women get in for $5. That's all women.
Yep. All women get in for $5. You can be any age to come celebrate the launch of Lindsay's Joyride. I'm super excited.
Anyone can come, though.
Anyone can come, yes. It's open to men, so you can bring your whole family, but sorry, women only get the sweet deal on the park. Right. And then we're going to have tons of raffles. We're going to have swag bags, just super fun stuff going on. So I'd love it if, any and all of you can come join us. Again, head to shred-girls.com. That one is /joyride. And all the details are there. There's a little RSVP. So if you think you can make it, please RSVP, because we're only going to have enough swag bags for those who RSVP'd. So there's that. And then actually the week after that, we're going to be doing a small camp for young women up here at Highlands.
This is sort of a learn to train or learn more about training sort of camp. And our age group is what, sort of your teens?
Yeah. So if you're kind of that early teens to late teens, so 13 to 16-ish, although we'd be willing to consider slightly older and slightly younger. We're going to be hosting, a 3-day learn to train camp. It's going to be super fun. You're going to meet rad girls. Again, really figure out the ins and outs of training. And I'm sure a lot of the topics that Danelle chats about in this episode are things that we'll kind of be diving into even more at that camp. So I'm really looking forward to that. So again, right. shred-girls.com to find out those details.
Really any discipline. We're sort of discipline agnostic. We'll mostly be on sort of road, maybe gravel-ish adventure. We'll see how crazy we get.
With Peter, it's always going to be a gravel-ish
I'll be
adventure.
Walking at some point.
Yeah,
for sure.
But
it'll be good times. And we'll have some guest coaches and stuff as well. So so look for details. Molly's Twitter or mine or
all over the
somewhere
place.
in the interwebs.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Enjoy this chat with Danelle.
Well, I wonder, this is your second time or third time on the podcast, I guess.
Is it second or third?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, so we appreciate you coming back, but I wonder, why don't you even tell us, like, I'm always curious what you're up to and stuff. Where are you in the world, and sort of just what you've been doing even this last week? Like, who are you working with? What does that look like?
Sure. Yeah, well, I guess maybe even since we last talked, I've become a bit more full, like I'm 4 days a week at the Canadian Sport Institute here, Pacific in Victoria.
Peter is so jealous of this, by the way.
Yeah, it's a fun place to be. As far as sports, I'm working mainly with the men and women's and para rowing teams that are based here, the national teams. And then triathlon is another one of my sports, which includes para as well. And a development next gen group that's out here training. And athletics, they have a West Hub team, it's called. So it's more of a middle distance group. And I think that's it. I feel like I'm missing someone. But that takes most of my time as far as one-on-one work with athletes and coaches, and I get to go out and train with them, and then, admin stuff around that. And even here we have what we call a mind room, which is nice, which I'm in right now, which we have a lot more space to meet with athletes, which is great. And a new thing we're getting into is bioneurofeedback training. So that's kind of exciting to help athletes kind of, in our world, athletes like instant feedback and numbers. So it's kind of a way to buy into mental training a little bit and see. So basically we hook them up to EEG for brain waves muscle tension, heart rate variability, skin conductance, breathing rate. So they can kind of see if they're able to calm their whole parasympathetic system down on demand. So like working with arousal level and also focus training. So yeah, we're just getting into that. So that's the kind of, in a nutshell, what I've been up to.
That is so cool.
Yeah, like is it very like, do you see that like the HRV sort of would start increasing if someone's able to relax, or what would you see in sort of a typical session?
Yeah, well, basically, like all these modalities, we know that they go up or down with stress or when you're not so stressed. But the main thing, obviously, we work on controlling is the breathing. So I think research shows that about 6 breaths per minute can kind of get you into that relaxed state. And once you get breathing well, yeah, the heart rate variability is kind of like in the same curve with your breathing. So it's kind of neat to see on the screen. And you can watch it in real time. And then a good thing with when you're working with athletes, you can see if there's blips with muscle tension goes up or even with the brain waves. And then you can touch in and say, well, what were you thinking at that point? And so you can kind of see the connection between what they're focusing on in their mind or how their body might tense when they get too far ahead of themselves or start thinking about something that gets them a little bit more stressed. So, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
Awesome. And what about you? What have you been up to as far as your athletics go?
Well, I've just been more of the recreational mode after, as you know, like being racing for so many years. I guess it's been a couple of years I've just been training for fun and mountain bike, more of a weekend warrior as far as mountain biking. I still swim with my master swim group. And funny enough, a friend got me into CrossFit of all things in the fall. So I've always wanted to do more strength training, and it's been really fun to get into that. So that's kind of a new challenge.
That's awesome.
And then also I've, as far as activities go, I've joined an adult hip hop beginner class.
So oh my gosh. I love it. I love it so much.
And it's both of these are like brain body challenges, right? So
for the endurance athlete, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just moving straight ahead, right? It's like lots of side to side and coordinated movements in both of those. So that's been a fun new challenge. Yeah.
Oh, that's so much fun. Yeah, I'm so jealous of that now.
Have you done much dancing in your like post-race type stuff? Like, have you ever been into that at all?
Other than like going out to the club and dancing for fun, I've never did any formal training. So right. This is kind of fun where you have to follow a beat and the whole group's together and, you know, the 8 count kind of thing. So yeah, but it's fun. Yeah, everyone's about the same level, and then it's kind of neat when everyone gets coordinated on the same move. It's fun.
Yeah, I always find that those like you're definitely you said it. I think there's like a brain challenge there in the coordination, but there's also a bit of the like just even the ego, I think, right? At least I find that at least, but yeah. And it's good, like you say, everyone's there, and everyone who's there is doing it. It's like you're performing or anything, right?
Yeah. You have to be okay with just like finding your own style, I guess, and being okay with failing and trying again. And if you lose the steps, you know, just kind of pick up wherever you can. So yeah, definitely a challenge that way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think, I think that's a good segue though too into today. We wanted to talk to you a bit about sort of, I don't know, it's a large topic. It's a huge topic. But sort of, I guess, body image,
Not quite the same thing.
And how that relates to sort of athletics, how that sort of relates to growing up, and then also parenting someone who is growing up. In endurance sport, it's a large topic just because of the importance or perceived importance of body weight and performance. But we also just in, I guess, today's age, the social media era, you know, everyone's sort of seeing this perfect sort of model. And so it's very hard, I think, for people growing up, right? There's a lot of comparison.
Yeah, the media is a big one. I can't imagine growing up right now with, all the social media to add extra pressure to the idealized body that young boys and girls are subject to.
And I guess why don't we start, like, you've been now in, sports psychology and counseling for a bunch of years. I don't know if you want to put a number on that or not, but, you've seen sort of, I think, even the pre or early social media sort of era, and then like over the last sort of 10 plus years. Like, have you seen an increase, do you think, in the amount of sort of just body image, self-confidence, that sort of stuff? Is that more common, or is that sort of our perception even?
That's a good question. I don't know if I could put numbers on that. I just know what I know from my own practice, but I've just seen the increase in pressure, I guess, as a professional or even amateur athlete trying to make it, that it's not, when social media first came about, or before that era, you might have had just a website or, a resume that you'd send in to get on a team or sponsorship or results. But now it's above and beyond that, where you might still have a blog, a website, an Instagram page, a Twitter, Snapchat, all these things that you have to kind of keep up. And it's all about image and presenting yourself. So, and then, there's that extra pressure with athletes. It's that big comparison culture, which so it just adds to that pressure of, am I meeting this ideal and projecting an image that's going to make me successful? And sometimes that can take away just from the actual intrinsic enjoyment of your pursuing your sport. So it's a fine balance, I think, that some athletes struggle with. Certain sports, it's even a bigger deal. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember, when I was a teenager, having plenty of issues when all that I had access to was like the occasional, Girls Life or 17 magazine in the mail. But now everyone has like a phone attached where it's new content every single day of like things to compare themselves to.
That's right. Yeah. And so it's refreshing when you do see things like Shred Girls or things that are just promoting a healthy body image. So you can still use that same medium to send positive messages and empowering messages, which I love seeing that stuff too. So I guess it depends what you focus on and what you follow as well. So.
And it's tough, right? Like, sometimes to me, as I guess from a coaching perspective, I look and I'm like, well, there's a lot of things on the day-to-day training front that we could do better, even this other stuff aside, right? But it's not that simple. You can't just say go and train and, come back in 3 months and you'll be faster, and then all this like resume and confidence and stuff should take care of itself, right? Like, it doesn't exist in a vacuum as much as I'd love it to.
Right. That would make your life easy.
Is that the process? If you had someone who's struggling with, they're overwhelmed by the, again, sort of confidence and sort of how they're looking or how much they weigh. But the ultimate goal is, they're supposed to be racing quickly, right? Like,
right.
The other stuff doesn't really matter if they're not racing quickly.
The other stuff, meaning like the image and the...
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough because I say that, but it does matter. It matters for the person, for sure, right? Like, you need to feel good about yourself. That's sort of the base that we need to start from.
Yeah. And I was at a talk here we did not too long ago, and even from a coaching perspective, as you know, it is one piece of the performance pie, but I was thinking this is even with you, Peter, depending on the developmental age of the athlete, like, it's not till the elite level that, even focusing on weight changes or, nutrition's a part of it all along, but like, it's not, there's kind of consensus that it's not till you're at the top of your sport that maybe that's the one thing you can manipulate a little bit for that next edge. If you're very well monitored and have a big team around you that's following you, to make sure it's done healthily and just at select times a year, because when athletes try and do it on their own, it's often when they get into trouble or go down an unhealthy relationship with their food and weight and end up maybe putting way too much, sorry for lack of a pun, weight on that piece of the pie. And if all those other things aren't taken care of before that, just enjoying the sport, having a healthy lifestyle balance, and just a good relationship with food in general, then it can be a negative maybe as a coach to put too much emphasis on that too early.
And you do see that, and that's a shame. And then I'm trying to pull it back to the the process, and we could be progressing the wattage and the volume and the all these things, the endurance base, like you say, the good sort of healthy meals and sleep. you know, these are the things that we start with, right? And then in 8 years, hopefully you're pretty quick. I always reference Dean Golich was on the podcast, and he coached, or may still coach, Katerina and lots of very successful females. And we asked him this, and this was a few years ago, sort of just what do you do with power to weight and this sort of stuff. And his answer was essentially, I don't want to misquote him, but essentially it was, you know, you train like a cyclist, you know, you eat good, healthy foods, keep training like a cyclist, and eventually you'll look like a cyclist. And he said, like, certainly it can get more, like you said, at the peak, you know, there's going to be some more manipulation and some people in there taking measurements and stuff. But that's, you know, for that Olympic, you know, year type thing, right? And that was his, and, you know, and he's had great success. So I always sort of just hold on to that. But then does that give, you know, the 14, the 16-year-old athlete, you know, do they care what Dean Golich thinks?
They should.
Right. yeah, exactly.
I think so.
Yeah.
Side note, I like that we use Katerina like Madonna or like Cher. It's just one name.
Well, I mean, Danelle knows Katerina.
Exactly. It's a good one who I think has a very positive relationship with her coach. And like I think athletes like her that are in the sport that long with a healthy relationship to it are proof that they're probably coming from a pretty healthy place. And, you know, she's an example probably of someone who hasn't even been injured really that I can think of. So she must be doing a few things right as far as that whole balance. But it's great to hear when coaches have that focus. But and you're right, the coach can have a lot of influence on that by the messages they send and what they promote and focus on. So
but is that sort of then where, you know, if you did have someone struggling, is that like, is it bringing it back to process, or like what is the, when these questions are coming up, I'm trying to think of examples, but like things about like, am I getting too heavy? Am I overweight? Or I'm not as thin as that person who's winning.
So if a young woman comes in with that like question,
I mean, the guys do it too, right? Like I think we're in an age where like it might even be worse with guys, right? Like it's just hard to say.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's why this whole topic, it used to be called, when we're speaking of REDS, relative energy deficiency syndrome, it used to be called female athlete triad. But that's part of the reason the name changed to include men, because it can be just as relevant for sure. So but I guess it is like you were just referring to with that coach, when those questions come in, it might just be getting back to the process and the healthy lifestyle, and not making it all about the number on the scale, but just, you know, looking at the quality of the food you're eating and all those like daily habits around recovery, like timing of when you eat right after, and all focused around feeling good and feeling strong, and not how you look, but how you, I guess, just helping them bring it more internal again, because sometimes those thoughts come up when it's a lot, they're comparing to others, or they're looking at just the image and the scale versus how strong am I feeling, how well am I recovering, how are my numbers, like as far as training numbers looking. So
and I've seen that like the around the workout sometimes is the sort of like the wedge you can drive in there if you are, you know, you're dealing with someone who's not eating enough. Is that with the Red S stuff? Is that, I think I've seen that, no? That the around the workout sometimes is the place where you can sort of drive a wedge in to say, oh, are you feeling better when you ate? And like, the workout went really well. Okay, good. So, you know, you fueled. And then sometimes that can help with getting the energy intake out.
Yeah, exactly. I think you speak to the fact that sometimes it can start to go that way just because of not ignorance, but just not knowing how much you need to fuel to compensate for the energy you've used. And so sometimes it's just an education. Like sometimes it's not done from a place of I need to lose weight. It's just like not knowing. So that's a good educational piece for a coach to focus on. And then, you know, the next level that athletes go to is sort of like mismanaging their efforts with energy needs and food, just by, you know, there's so many fad diets out there in the media as well that they think they know another athlete that's following some crazy diet, so they kind of like try those things on their own and it doesn't really work out. And then I guess the next level would, if they go into a clinical like obsession with their eating, where it can get pretty dangerous. So as a coach, it's just kind of looking for those behaviors and trying to intervene in a healthy way.
I feel like 2018 was really rough for like the fad dieting situation. Just as far as like fad diets that were in the media, especially like the athletic media, I'm gonna say, and I'll throw myself under the bus here too when I say that. Like intermittent fasting, the ketogenic stuff, like it all kind of came up in 2018, and I think a lot of people struggled with that.
Yeah, you noticed that?
Oh yeah, just and especially combining the two of those things while trying to train at a high level, especially like I'd say like the amateur elite maybe, so like the back of the elite pack, I think is particularly susceptible to that kind of stuff.
Right. It's kind of looking for the next edge.
Yes.
And not really doing the research.
Well, and it gets back to that, right? Like no one wants I saw something recently. It was like everyone's fighting for like the marginal gains, the like 1%, but forgetting about the like 99%.
I told you that. Swain Tuft told me that.
Swain. So another.
Yeah.
And that was basically his opinion that like people just don't do like endurance training. Like we know if you just, essentially ride a bunch and, go to sleep every night. But we're all trying to get 1% gain off of a ketogenic diet that's completely disruptive and
when we're at like 50%
or not even.
That's a huge good reminder for most athletes, as you're developing. Like, I think the motto with athletics here is developing happy, healthy athletes. And like, if you can just stay injury free, get the training in, sleep well, and eat reasonably well, you're, like you said, you're 90, maybe 95, 99% there. So, and if you can cover all that consistently, then these other things are very small pieces of the pie. So,
I wonder if maybe we just, could you like define Red S and sort of give us a little bit of a sort of, I guess, definition? And
because I think everyone knows the like old school female athlete triad, but everyone's still kind of a little bit confused on what the heck Red S is.
That's a good question.
Sounds kind of like communism is taking over the like athletic community or something.
Or a new supplement.
Yeah. Try Red S.
Yeah.
I could just see the drug commercial.
Side effects include
Red X.
Well, I guess it's pretty simple. Like, relative energy deficiency in the title is basically you're not consuming enough that you need. And then, your immune system starts to get affected. You start to lose muscle strength, glycogen stores, and basically performance will start to go down. And if it gets, in females, sometimes the physiological or physical symptoms are you lose your menstrual cycle, your bone health can be affected, and your hormones. So it's when it's like you're not taking in enough to compensate for the energy you need to, let alone train, but also recover. And I guess a lot of these things are tested with hormones and physically, but you can also see it sometimes psychologically with behaviors. And, that's where, from my end of thing, it's around the thinking and the beliefs around food and kind of keeping those areas healthy.
Right. And it can be, and so some of these symptoms can manifest quickly, but some take a while to sort of develop, and, certainly can be, I guess, not discussed, until it's become an even bigger issue, right? Like you could have a 20-year-old athlete who's developed some of this, and even has good results for a few years, right? And then you see sort of things hitting a hard stop at some point.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes when athletes, even if it's by unhealthy means, lose weight quite quickly, and then they're often rewarded with sometimes faster results because of that power weight ratio, if we're talking about cycling or even running. And then sometimes it kind of reinforces some of those negative habits, unfortunately. So it's when athletes have a good team around them, whether it's parents or teammates or coaches that can sort of intervene and notice when it becomes an unhealthy behavior. And that's a tricky thing to do.
Do you have any like tips, I guess, for parents or coaches as far as what are sort of some of the earlier warning signs?
I guess it's like if you see any changes in behavior, I guess I'm using my own experience having been on many teams running growing up, there's a big change in eating behaviors. I guess parents might notice this more, sort of eating on their own or refusing to eat with people or eating in secret is one of the things, or just a real focus on food and weighing. I guess, it's harder sometimes to see the obvious, like if, you're looking really thin isn't always a great comment, because that can sometimes reinforce that behavior. But, so just looking for, changes in mood and recovery and all those things, and just being aware of them. But it's also maybe focusing on what you're modeling as a parent or a coach. So checking your own beliefs, your own language around food and body size and shape can go a long way. So what you're modeling to your athletes. But as far as the signs, I think it's just asking good questions. And then if you need to refer, finding someone the athlete can talk to, like a good nutritionist or psychologist, if it comes to that. I don't know if I answered your question there, but
no, that's great.
Yeah. I think that makes sense, right? And I think even decreased work capacity would be maybe another thing that a coach might see.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's something like, at least initially, someone like yourself would probably have conversations like this with people, or is at some point that's beyond what you do, or like if a young athlete.
I think it would, if it's like, going into the eating disorder spectrum, I would probably refer, but there is still a lot of conversations around beliefs around food, or that what's, just even exploring as a coach, what's your relationship with food can go a long way. And a lot of it with the young developing athletes is just good education. So I think a lot of sometimes when athletes struggle is just ignorance, or because like we said, there's so many diets out there in the media, and sometimes just correcting, or not correcting, but informing them a little bit more about healthy habits can be a pretty empowering thing. And even, promoting positive body related talk. I think even my own mom, I think about this more now, that growing up, I feel pretty lucky because she never once put down her body in front of me. And I'm like, oh, isn't that something? Because it's so common. It's almost like a societal thing for women and girls to not only comment on others' bodies, but like to put themselves down. So even, as coaches or parents or teammates, watching our language to not even comment on it can go a long way. I digress from your question again.
No, that's really important.
I think that's exactly I think sometimes as parents or coaches, we think that we have to tell, right? But there's so much in that modeling just good behavior, right? And I've always thought of that, as I coach more and more and training or, being competitive as much, like I think it's almost more valuable that I keep training and, doing what I say is important, right? There's not special rules. And in the same way, the nutrition or like you say, talking about people who are overweight or, or someone who, got skinny and won or something, right? Like it's stuff that used to be more common and hopefully is less common now that we're talking in that way.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but I think that's a great, I just want to say your mom, that's a perfect example, right? That's the stuff that we can, you as a parent can definitely, model that behavior, right? And that's often what the kids, then what we learn, right? Yeah.
And it's true that even, like as we're socialized, often girls and women, not just in sport, but are often praised more for looks versus abilities and like their effort and things they're good at that aren't related to how they look. So it's important to kind of be conscious of that and go away from that. And it can go, a long way to empowering that sort of growth mindset that you work at things and it's how you feel on the inside about your athletes. It's important. So coaches can definitely do that as well.
I thought one thing that was related to that, that actually one of my clients has younger kids growing up as well. And they were saying, I guess, is it Shani Flanagan? Is that the name I'm looking for? Flanagan has like a cookbook. And so they got the kids into that, and like the kids are sort of preparing food and stuff, and sort of getting the kids involved in the food preparation and sort of liking cooking and learning cooking and preparing food for other people. I thought that was even something that food sort of now, they know how to cook, which I think is a barrier for a lot of athletes, whether there's Red S or not. I think there's just a lot of, I'm always amazed that like the microwaving a sweet potato and frying an egg is like mystifying to people, but
right, especially on the road, right?
Right, yeah. So I think that's like a really good way to keep that open, hopefully, and that may come and go sort of as kids go through puberty and all this stuff, but I think if you have that there, like that's a good way to sort of get some help in the kitchen, but then also sort of just get some of those skills and appreciation for food preparation maybe into young adults.
Exactly, yeah. That's a really good point. So
I'm thinking, someone's coming out of Red S. Would you say coming out of Red S? Cured, healing, healing? Yeah. We'll go with healing. Overcoming, yeah. So someone's overcoming it. I feel like that part would be really rife with body image issues, right? Like you're now trying to, get healthier, which is often going to mean gaining back some weight. So how do you navigate that as an athlete? Because I have to imagine that's probably like the most difficult part of coming out of Red S is the mental side of it versus the physical one.
Yeah, and it's really like keeping that focus on long-term health, because you're right. Often, sometimes you have to gain even more weight than you had previously to get your hormones back up to where they should be, to get for women to get your menstruation cycle back. So it can be a long process, and almost feeling like you're, because a lot of, I guess, when Red S does get serious, it can be a means of control for the athlete, and sometimes it's more emotional than performance-based at that side of things. So coming out of it is like definitely letting go of restricting and eating for health, and really keeping that focus on eating for long-term health and not performance. So that's a real change in mindset. I mean, they should both go together, obviously, but until everything's stable again, it's that would be the focus. And it is definitely challenging for athletes to keep changing that. And a lot of it is, when they get into that state, it's like those feelings of not being enough. And, and athletes, I think sometimes this comes from perfectionist mindset, which can have a lot of positive qualities for athletes, like wanting to take care of every single detail and do everything perfect. And sometimes that's what gets some of our best athletes to the top, but it can also have a dark side if it's too restricting and controlling, and can lead to these unhealthy body image or eating habits. And so dealing with that sort of perfectionist thinking can be a challenge, I think, coming out of Red S as well, to be, I'm okay, I'm not a failure for eating more or taking care of my health, and not looking what they think they should look like. So
and I think Marianne Vos actually wrote that in her autobiography, which is only available in Dutch, which is sort of a bummer because I love to read it and do not read Dutch. But she talked a bunch about kind of coming out of an eating disorder and what that looks like as an athlete who's won a lot of world championships with that. So interesting. It's really hard when you're having the good results in that place, but it's not ultimately like sustainable. Right.
Yeah.
And I think for women, I'm going to say for women, I think it's harder because not only do we have the performance side, we also just have the, women's body image standards from like normal media hitting us too, right? So regaining weight is like going both against performance and, societally, it's like, oh, you lost weight, you look great. No one's like, you gained, or very few people are like, oh, you've gained a lot of weight and you look great, or no one wants to hear that.
That's right. Yeah. And it's true, even as women athletes, I think there's more emphasis on appearance. So it's a lot more pressure. It's and men can, results can speak a little more for their media stuff. So
absolutely.
it's unfortunate that way. Yeah.
And it strikes me too that the other thing maybe working against females is, you're
everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that, but you're as women grow up, so you come through puberty, right? Like there's going to be a weight gain, and I guess that's true for men too, right? Like you can be a super skinny cadet racer or something, 14, 15, and you're winning everything, and then all of a sudden you hit puberty and your body changes. For either sex, right? And that can be something. And you can certainly, lots of people, train away and they have a couple of years and then away they go and they're fine. Right. And then I think as we get older too, there's just a reality that, there's going to be some decreases or increases in body weight as well as we go through, even if we remain quite healthy, right? Like that's right. The natural way things go. So only looking at weight, I think sometimes is restricting, right? Like there could still be great performance, great feeling, but sometimes it's just like that one number on a scale gets missed, right? And I wonder if sometimes that's what's missing too, is just that number is not even necessarily a number that needs to be tracked for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was working with an athlete not too long ago, in a group, and the coach was going to start weighing them. And for her, with some background struggle, like that was really hard. She didn't want to be weighed. She didn't want to see it. And knowing for her, it wasn't a healthy thing to do. So it was, coming around strategies, like if it has to be part of the, I think, number one, encouraging coaches not even to weigh people in. There's other ways to kind of track health that way. And, focusing too much. And you're right. So as men grow, or boys grow into men, sometimes if we're looking at cycling in these power to weight ratios, the same kind of, they can gain more muscle than they actually want if we're looking at body image for cycling or women. But, and I think it brought to mind what you're saying there is the self-compassion aspect of body image and just accepting their body the way it is. Because sometimes that mental struggle is just always wishing you were whatever your ideal is in your mind, striving to be that instead of just accepting who you are and what your potential is within your body, I think is kind of a way that a coach can focus that and just avoiding that number, because sometimes it can be the one thing that people put all their confidence in or their self-esteem in, where there's so many other, like I deal with confidence issues a lot. And so it's kind of like looking at all the things that you get your confidence from. And sometimes the body image issues come up when it's all focused on numbers, not just on a scale, but like race result numbers or performance numbers. And so that can go really up and down.
There are just so many numbers that we could get kind of obsessed with. So it's like, I don't feel like all of those numbers are ever going to be high at the, you're never going to be happy if all you're focused on is, all of these different numbers, because one of them is not going to be what you wanted it to be.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
It's very hard to get all the stars to align there.
Yeah. It's kind of like instant feedback, which we all love, but at the same time, if you put all your confidence and self-esteem into those numbers, it's a tricky place to be. And that's even when we're speaking of social media, but like I'm digressing a bit, but even with training numbers, right? Like when I first started was maybe when I got into mountain biking, maybe I had heart rate and maybe power if I did a test, right? But now there's so many other numbers that
and you can post them all for everyone to see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that social media aspect of it too. So, and then you're comparing training things instead of thinking, okay, going internal and saying, how did that feel inside? So that's just as important for whether training or body image. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So on the topic of social media, here's kind of a really tricky one. So a lot of the top performers in, say cycling, pretty much across the board, the top performers are, generally in that quite slim territory. So as a mother or as a coach, I guess, or father, how do you talk to a young woman who's seeing, okay, the girls that win all look like this, I don't look like this? How do you get through that? Because they're great role models, but at the same time are kind of giving, this body image issue.
That is a really hard question. I don't know if I can fully answer that either. But yeah, because on the one side, that is like if we're looking at, cycling, it seems like it has a bit more range, but I'm thinking of running, and it's very, you look at the top marathoners, like it's pretty cut and dry. Like there's a certain range of body weight, power weight ratio that
who was that
makes
one
it elite.
runner that was doing New York where like the New York Times did a big article where it's like she doesn't have like a normal running body type, and I think she had like 9% body fat or something, like instead of 6.
Oh my goodness.
Like it was kind of ludicrous.
Yeah.
And running's definitely tough because there's definitely like like there's a body size, right? That not even weight, right? Like there's just so it's at the elite level, there's a certain range, right? And it's pretty narrow. So, and that's tough, right? Like when you have a young person.
Yeah. And I guess it's just not, that is a fact and we all know it, but focusing on that as a young person, that's not really going to be helpful. And
I mean, that's existed, also, right?
Yeah.
Like there's I was never going to play in the NBA, just statistically, right? Or the NHL for that.
Yes, but did your parents ever tell you couldn't be a basketball player?
I mean, I never really went down that road, but I mean, and you can. There's examples, like you can look at people who are smaller, I guess, right, and just practice harder. But
I mean, your father still thinks you could make it in like the NBA. Like playing baseball professionally. So
I was pretty good. Baseball was probably the sport I could have made.
You came from a very confidence boosting background there.
Well, and I don't know if that's part of, when kids are younger, making sure that there is sort of, it's sampling of sports and stuff, right? And they find what they like, and ultimately it's not just about becoming elite, right? That tends to be what we talk about a lot, is that high performance.
That's right. The
reality is in whatever sport, no matter what your body type, the chances of getting to that pointy end of the stick are pretty low. Yeah.
And you've made a good point that you don't want to squash anyone's dreams. And there are lots of exceptions to this rule. There's always those athletes that make it that aren't in that, general range. But like what is the point of telling even a 15-year-old you're never going to make it because you're not this body type? Like that's not even, it's just so far from where they're at the moment. So it's always like, I always think it's like, what's the optimal challenge for where someone's at motivational wise, developmentally, their goals, if they're not even thinking of that elite level yet. Like, I mean, it's all about having fun and lifestyle and health. And if performance becomes a focus down the line, then the athlete will get there if all those other things are in place.
Well, and I think too, like if we're just talking about marathon running for sure, right? But if you widen that out to ultra or sprinting or, just adventure running, right? Like we would see that body type open up hugely. And people who do that lifelong, and even now with social media, I guess the only upside at the moment is that you can be like an adventuring sort of like fun, whatever, and you could make a career out of that, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I have one more kind of parent-oriented question, and this is one that I kind of struggle with, and I can't think of like a good answer for, but we'll see. I mean, at some point, like unfortunately, childhood obesity is on the rise, and at some point, if someone is struggling with both body image, but then also like medically needs to drop weight. I mean, I've known people who are super active, but like medically, still needed to lose weight. How do you balance that as a parent trying to encourage healthy living and, getting to this like healthy point while not hurting body image? Nice light question.
Yeah. But I think one of the things, correct me if I'm wrong, you just mentioned there that sometimes someone's very active, but they're still need to lose some weight. And that just goes to show that you can never judge a book by its cover, right? Like sometimes one of my training partners when I was cycling back in Canmore was a super active, super fit guy, and he was actually quite overweight, but like he could hold a conversation like anyone else. And so, I don't know all the issues behind the weight, but I know he was probably a lot healthier than some thin people you might see walking down the street that were probably technically obese because they had no muscle on them. You know, there's that stat that sometimes like supermodels can be technically obese because they're 30% body fat because they have no muscle left. So, you know, and I even had at a counseling group, a guy came and spoke on obesity, and he had some things growing up where something happened with his hormones, and he's, you know, heavy, overweight, technically obese, but he only eats something like 1,500 calories a day, and that's just the way his body works. And it just made me think you can never judge someone by how they look, on how fit and healthy they might still be on the inside. And I think that's the message too, that you can still be carrying a little extra weight, but have a quite healthy heart and be active. So it's more like if the kids are active, hopefully that, and still need to medically lose weight, that focusing on the activity and finding something to enjoy that could be a natural byproduct of that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're exactly right. It's not always that if someone doesn't look like the pros or elite amateurs or whatever, they can still be perfectly healthy and like good at the sport. It's
right. Yeah.
Might not be, going pro anytime soon, but hey, none of us are, so it's fine.
Yeah. You might still have the amazing core and like 6-pack abs, but they just don't show the way other people do. And that's just your body. And it's important that you are strong. And some people focus so much on like getting that beach body or whatever, but yeah.
Well, and from a parenting perspective too, like there is the chance that like some people do react differently to the same environment is sort of what we're talking about, right? So it's the same foods and same activity, but then, one person is weighs more. Right. And so I think sometimes you'll see in some of those houses, like it's okay, one person has to go on a diet, but everyone else gets to eat poorly still. Right.
Right.
And I think that gets back to that, eating as a family, making sure the phones aren't out, and then eating, everyone helping with food preparation and good foods in the house. Sometimes that is missing, as much as there is individual differences for sure. Then that might be a thing where everyone could be healthy, no matter what they look like. Like you say, like the skinnier people could be more unhealthy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Some skinny people just eat Diet Coke and cookies all day, and is that healthy? So, yeah. And you're right. It's a lot of lifestyle thing, like choosing to be active as a family, eating well together. And it's, if one person's singled out, that can be very difficult because we're social animals and we're very influenced by our environment. And as parents, it's the food you bring into the house, the activities you choose to do as a family, which can sort of set those habits for life down the road. So there's a lot of elements coming to this that we've been talking about. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else, Peter? I feel like that covered pretty much all of the questions we wanted to touch on, from Red S to how to actually deal with it on more of the mental side.
Yeah, I think it's nebulous, but I think having Danelle here, both from the sport psychology side of things and then also as a parent as well, was quite helpful.
Yeah, we keep trying to figure out a way to answer the questions, and we keep coming back to, well, we're not parents, so we can really only speculate on this.
Well, you've got some pretty good ideas, yeah.
Well, I think it might even be easier to speculate on it when you're not parents and you're not actually thinking about it in the context of your own child. It's easier to have like a bit of an objective stance on it, maybe.
Yeah, well, even thinking about it is a big step ahead of most people. And as coaches, you experience that, or you're a wealth of knowledge with all the people you both talk to, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and it's been really cool working with more and more young people, I think, and just seeing. I coached even cross-country running this season at the local high school here, and it was really interesting even getting, a totally different sport and those high schoolers kind of different issues that they're dealing with too.
Yeah. Did you notice anything around body image, or what was your
I think
sense to that age?
The biggest thing I noticed, well, To be totally honest, I saw a couple people leave after the first couple of practices, and I would venture a guess that it was because they didn't feel like they fit in body image wise, which I was super upset about. And like, sadly, I don't work at the school, so I couldn't really chase them down, and do anything about it. But it did make me start thinking about, how to make sure a sport that's supposed to be super inclusive, like cross country, stays super inclusive.
Right.
So that was interesting. The other thing that I noticed, and it made me start a series of articles on the Shred Girl site, was the lack of nutrition information that they had. It seemed like, both like from, general stuff like skipping lunch before practice and things like that. But then also, the stuff that they did know was all stuff they were reading in like Women's Health or like Oxygen or whatever, fitness magazines. Yeah. And that stuff isn't for 14-year-olds. That stuff is barely for grown-ass women. So
well, and it was sort of at the center of the Red S stuff, right? Where it's not necessarily even that correct me if I'm wrong here, but the calories may even be sufficient over the like week or the day, but it's like nothing ahead of like the whole day before this cross country workout obviously doesn't go overly well, and then like a bunch of like crappy food in the evening.
Right.
And that's, I think, what Molly was seeing a bunch of, like, the workout or the race went quite poorly, and then like burger fries and a shake or something, later in the day.
Yeah.
So I thought that was all just like, oh, right. It's not because they're not trying to do stuff right. They're trying to do nutrition to the best of their kind of abilities, but they just don't know what to be doing.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the heart of this at that age is just education. And a lot of it is just not doing the best they can with the knowledge they have. And a lot of parents don't have a lot of knowledge on this either. And I remember it wasn't until I became, even though I grew up in a very healthy, like make meals from scratch family, it wasn't until I read my first book on sport nutrition as a cyclist that I was like, I felt so empowered. Like all of a sudden I had all this knowledge. It was just like basic stuff, like drinking this much water per day can, if you're dehydrated by 10%, your performance will suffer this much more. So it was just like getting a certain amount of protein. It was just basic stuff. But I remember like, oh, wow, I had all this like great knowledge, like to help my performance. So I was really excited about it. So it can just be like little tidbits. Like, did you know if you eat within 15, 30 minutes after training, you'll recover this much better for the next day? And that kind of gets them excited about
and it's funny because you almost don't remember not knowing that stuff, right? You're like, of course right. I need to eat protein, obviously. And then I'm like, wait, when did I learn that? It's probably in my 20s. Like,
was it the Nancy Clark book? Like the only book that existed?
To sport nutrition.
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah,
like a blue and white, red. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably it. Like that was the glory thing back then. Is like it was simple. You just like there's like this one book that you got. Right?
Yeah.
She was very pro orange juice, if I recall, though.
Well, but I mean, at some point, like keep it simple, right? Like have your orange juice before your workout, I guess, right? Like
there you go.
You could probably do worse than that.
Yeah. I just remember I started drinking a lot more water and eating a lot more tuna after eating that book. So.
Right. Yeah.
I had a friend, I saw her recently. I was like, oh my gosh, you look fantastic. What have you been doing? And she's like, I started drinking water. It's like, whew.
Yeah, sometimes
so
like
energetic.
We were talking about the training basics, but sometimes it's just like the basics of nutrition. Drinking, like making sure you have a water bottle with you all day is like can go a long way to mood, feeling good, recovery, being alert, and being ready to train. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I feel like I need to go hydrate now. Thank you so much for chatting. This has been awesome.
Well, I enjoy chatting to both of you as always. It's so much fun.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Consummate Athlete podcast. You can check out my stuff over at theoutdooredit.com or by following me on Instagram and Twitter at Molly J. Herford. And you can check out Peter's coaching, training plans, blogs, all that fun stuff over at smartathlete.ca or by following him on Twitter and Instagram at Peter Glassford. And if you want to support this show and other awesome podcasts, please check out wideanglepodium.com for show info, other podcasts, bonus content, and to become a donating member. so you can get all of that rad behind the scenes content and help keep shows like this on the air. And lastly, if you're enjoying this podcast and all the information that we're bringing to you every single week, do us a solid and pop into iTunes to leave us a rating and review. It takes you about 2 seconds. You can do it on your computer, you can do it on your phone, and it really helps us out. Thanks so much, and we will see you next week.